Most of my life, I measured my garden by what it gave me in August. Tomatoes piled on the counter, beans more than my family could keep up with, more zucchini than anyone should have to deal with. So that was the high point, and then November would come swinging in and take it all away. One overnight frost and everything went black and limp. I'd spend a week pulling dead plants, and by December I was back to buying grocery store produce trucked in from 1,000 miles away. It tasted like nothing. I knew it, my family knew it, but I told myself that was just how gardening worked. You grow in summer, you stop in winter. That was the deal. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out that wasn't the deal at all. That was just a habit I'd inherited from watching other people do it wrong. Because I had neighbors, older folks with Amish and Mennonite roots who never stopped eating from their land, not in November, not in January, not in February when the ground was frozen solid and the sky sat flat and gray over everything. And once I started paying close attention to what they were actually doing, the whole shape of what a garden could be changed for me completely. I want to be upfront before we get into the specifics because I think it matters. I am not a master gardener. I don't have a degree in horticulture. What I have is about 30 years of trial and error in a Zone 6 garden and about 10 years of deliberate observation of people who've been growing food all 12 months of the year for generations. The Amish families I'm talking about don't have an on-season and an off-season. They have a continuous cycle with no dead months where every week of the year connects forward and backward to the weeks around it. That was the first shift I had to make in my own thinking, and it didn't come easy. I had 20 years of seasonal muscle memory telling me to shut the garden down in October and not think about it again until April. Unlearning that took real effort. The change started on a specific afternoon I still think about. Second week of August, hot and humid, and I was out picking beans when I noticed my neighbor working a far bed with a hoe. I assumed he was turning something under, but when I walked over, he was planting rows of kale, spinach, and late-season carrots. In August, I asked what he was doing, and he looked at me with an expression that was genuinely kind, but slightly puzzled, like I'd asked him why he was wearing boots in the rain. He said he was planting his winter gardens, and then he went back to hoeing. That was it. But I drove home thinking about it all evening, and something in the way he said it, his winter garden, not a fall experiment, not a late season stretch, but his winter garden, as if it were as ordinary as anything else, cracked something open in how I was thinking. What I came to understand is that the Amish plan their gardens backwards. They start by asking what they need to be eating in the deepest part of winter, and then work backward through the calendar to figure out what needs to go in the ground and when. When you start your planning from February instead of May, the whole growing year rearranges itself. Suddenly July isn't just the middle of summer, it's the most critical planting window of the entire year. The weeks when most conventional gardeners are doing nothing but harvesting, those are the weeks when the Amish are putting in the crops that will carry their families through November, December, and January. Miss that window and you've missed the second half of the food year entirely. I missed it for 2 decades and didn't even know there was a second half. If any of this is landing for you the way it landed for me, leave a comment below and tell me what month your garden usually goes quiet. I ask because it genuinely helps me understand where people are starting from. And because I still read every comment, everyone, this channel is small enough that I can do that, and I don't take it for granted. Now, the mechanics. The Amish approach to planting isn't one big event in spring. It's a continuous rolling rhythm called succession planting, and the concept is almost frustratingly simple. Instead of planting one long row of lettuce in May and watching it all bolt in the June heat at the same time, they plant a short row every 2 to 3 weeks. The first row is ready in late spring, and the second 2 weeks after, and the third 2 weeks after that, and by the time early plantings go bitter, newer rows are coming in behind them. And they do the same with radishes, which go in every 10 to 14 days from early spring through September. Bush beans get sown in batches every 3 weeks from late spring until about 70 days before first frost. In Zone 6, with the first frost around October 15th, that last bean planting needs to be in the ground by early August. You do the math from your frost dates and the days to maturity on your seed packet, and suddenly the season extends far beyond what most people think is possible. For the fall garden specifically, the key crops are the ones that don't just tolerate cold, they genuinely improve because of it. Kale, spinach, carrots, parsnips, Brussels sprouts, and turnips all convert starches to sugars when temperatures drop, a natural antifreeze response that makes them sweeter and richer than anything they produce in summer heat. Horticultural science has confirmed this. The Amish have known it for 200 years. Winterboar kale is the variety I've had the most consistent luck with. Extraordinarily cold hardy, and after a few hard frosts, it tastes almost nothing like the kale you'd buy at a grocery store in July. Napoli is my go-to carrot for fall and winter. Bloomsdale long-standing spinach is what I sow about 6 weeks before first frost. All of these go in during that July to early August window, and the one challenge at that time of year is soil. Temperature and summer soil is hot and dry, and cool season seeds can struggle to germinate. The solution the Amish use is simple. Water the bed thoroughly the day before you sow, and then cover the newly seeded rows with a thin layer of straw or burlap to hold moisture and keep the surface temperature down. Once seedlings push through, you pull the cover. It takes 10 extra minutes, and it's the difference between a full, even stand and a patchy row with gaps you'll spend the rest of fall regretting. If you're finding this useful, please subscribe, and I mean that in the most direct way I know how to say it. And this is where I put the things I've spent years learning from people who know far more than I do. And I'd love for it to reach the people who are ready to hear it. If you know someone who thinks gardening has to stop in October, send this to them. That's the most helpful thing you can do. And the two tools at the heart of how Amish families extend their harvest deep into the cold months are cold frames and straw mulch. Neither one involves electricity, neither one is expensive, both of them work remarkably well. And both sit in that category of knowledge that feels obvious the moment you understand it and mysterious before you do. A cold frame is a bottomless box with a transparent lid. The Amish build theirs from scrap lumber and old storm windows. A back wall about 18 inches tall, front wall about 12, angled toward the south to catch low winter sun. On a clear day in January, even in Zone 5, the temperature inside can climb 20 to 30 degrees above the outside air. That's not enough to grow crops from seed at any meaningful speed, but it's absolutely enough to keep cold, hardy crops that were sized up in fall alive, harvestable, and fresh through the worst of winter. Spinach, mache, claytonia, winter density lettuce. You walk out on a Tuesday, lift the lid, cut what you need for dinner, and close it back up. They'll still be there on Friday. It's not a greenhouse. It's a refrigerator you built from scrap and an old window, and you harvest from it on your own schedule. The straw mulch technique for root crops is simpler still, and it's the one I'd most want every person reading this to try at least once, because the first time it works, you'll feel something shift permanently in how you think about your garden. After your carrots and parsnips have been through several frosts, which improves their flavor dramatically, and before the ground freezes hard, you mark each row with a tall wooden stake so you can find it under snow. Then you pile 8 to 12 inches of loose straw over the bed. The Amish add one step I didn't learn until I'd already spent 2 seasons watching my straw mat down and lose its insulating value under wet snow. They lay a sheet of old plywood or scrap of metal roofing flat on top of the straw. And that rigid cover keeps rain and snow from compacting the mulch and adds another layer of insulation. What you've built with maybe 30 minutes of work is a root cellar in the ground. The soil underneath stays just above freezing. The carrots stay alive in it, still connected to the earth they grew in, slowly converting every remaining starch to sugar. When you need carrots in January, you slide the plywood off, pull back the straw from one section, and dig the ground underneath is workable. You take what you need, push the straw back, replace the cover, and go inside. I have stood in my backyard in 28-degree weather in boots and a coat digging carrots out of the ground. And I want to tell you honestly that there is something about that experience no grocery store run can touch. You grew those carrots, you put them to bed in November, and you just went out and got them in January, and they are the sweetest thing you have ever pulled out of soil. By February, the sugar content in a straw mulch carrot that I put spin in the ground since October is genuinely extraordinary. I look forward to winter carrots now more than I look forward to August tomatoes, and I never thought I'd say anything like that. If you've made it this far and something in this is changing how you see your garden calendar, I'd love for you to subscribe and keep going. I have a whole series building around how traditional communities grow food. And this is really just the beginning of it. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. The fourth pillar of the Amish system is preservation, and the critical thing to understand is that it's not treated as a weekend project you get to when you feel like it. It's scheduled into the season with the same seriousness as planting and harvesting. When tomatoes come in, they get canned that week. When green beans are ready, they're pressure canned within days. When cabbage heads size up, some go into the root cellar wrapped in newspaper, and some become sauerkraut. This isn't spontaneous. It's planned in March when the seed order goes in, because an Amish gardener is already calculating how many quarts of tomatoes the family will need from October through April, and planting enough to produce that surplus deliberately. An unheated basement corner kept between 32 and 40 degrees with humidity around 80 to 90% will hold potatoes 4 to 6 months, winter squash 3 to 4, and onions up to 6. Cabbages wrapped individually in newspaper hold well into February. The knowledge behind which varieties store longest and when to harvest for maximum storage life comes from generations of refinement by people whose families depended on getting it right. What strikes me most about the whole Amish approach is the complete absence of dead time. There is no month in their garden calendar when nothing is happening, even in the coldest weeks of January. Something is being harvested from under straw, something is being pulled from the cold frame, something preserved in summer is being rotated off the shelf. The garden is never fully at rest. That's not because they work harder than everyone else. It's because they plan for all 12 months instead of 5. Start with one change this year. Just one. If it's anywhere near July, get some kale seeds and Bloomsdale spinach and put them in the ground this week. If fall is already past, order Napoli carrot seeds now and mark your calendar for the straw mulch experiment next October, and you don't need to overhaul everything at once. One last thing, and I mean this genuinely. If you made it this far and something in here shifted how you're thinking, leave me a comment and tell me what zone you're in. Tell me what you've been growing. Tell me what season you're going to tackle first. Those conversations are honestly the reason I keep making these videos. This isn't a big channel. It's just me and the camera and 30 years of figuring things out slowly. And if